Hey guys, welcome into the podcast. Today is the 19th. I'm actually recording a little bit early tonight. I just want to start off first by saying thank you to everybody who supports and listens to me. I know it's kind of a little thing, but it really does mean a lot to me because there are people that I've known for a long time or who I consider to be friends that don't bother to, They know this is something that I'm like starting out and I'm trying to get acquainted with it. But they are like, "Hey man, it's really cool that you're doing a podcast." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. Thank you." And they're like, "Yeah, but I haven't listened to it." And I'm just kind of like, "Oh, okay. Thank you for that." Like, how do you really, in your head, how does that make sense? I mean, well, we listen to music all the time. Yes, these people, they're like, "Oh yeah, I love watching my Netflix shows." That's fine. That's cool. And I won't ever fault you for choosing what you like. But at some point, why wouldn't you support your vision of your friends? Why wouldn't you support them with their businesses? Why wouldn't you support them with podcasts, with music, whatever it might be? It's funny because people always clown on other people like, "Oh, have you listened to my mixtape, bro?" Yeah, and I get that. I think that's kind of funny, but at the same time, who better to give feedback than people that understand you and who know you? I think it's kind of ridiculous that, you wouldn't take time. I mean, my podcasts are like 30 minutes to an hour long. I haven't even hit the hour mark yet. Granted, I'm only 2 podcasts in. But out of your whole week, you don't have an hour? You don't have time when you could just put it on and listen? You could throw it on in the car. You could throw it on, honestly, during your workout. Listening to something other than music isn't going to kill you. And, I'm going on and on about this to people who actually listen to my podcast. So, the people that don't and the people that this is directed towards will never hear it. But thank you, honestly, for listening. I've been thinking a lot about like what I wanted to talk on this week. There's been a lot of cool, interesting things. I'm waiting to talk on sports. I want to talk basketball, but the way that the playoffs are going right now, we're going to be into the finals probably by next weekend or pretty close to it. And so then I'll talk all NBA once the finals start, because that's really when it comes down to these good teams that are going to be playing, because quite frankly, people keep telling me that the Spurs are good, but Spurs are looking like junior college out there with the Warriors. And Boston is completely overmatched. I mean, what a game tonight, just complete and utter domination by the Cavs. So I'll talk more about the NBA once the finals start, and talk about the awards and what the season kind of looked like, and what I think of people like Lonzo Ball and the upcoming draft. It should all be really interesting stuff. I kind of wanted to talk about relationships today, and just kind of go over what do we expect out of relationships these days. I am single. I finally cut things off with the ex-girlfriend completely. For those who actually know the history of it, that's a big deal, because we dated on and off for 2 years, 2.5 years almost, and there was a lot of going back, a lot of backsliding, and it wasn't healthy. It wasn't a healthy relationship, despite my feelings for her or her feelings for me or what we had going in our relationship. It wasn't healthy when it came down to it. And I think that's a pitfall that a lot of people fall into these days, is this familiarity and what's comfortable versus what's actually good for you. I don't think that we understand really, hey, this is not a healthy relationship. Regardless of what people tell you and what people think is going on, it's not healthy. Sometimes it takes stepping back to really see exactly what was going on, and it helps us to see where other people were coming from the whole time they were coming at us about our relationship. Nobody really wants to hear that when they're in a relationship with someone that they care about and they think is someone serious. They don't want to hear, that person's no good for you. That person's a joke. You know, they're lying to you. They're whatever. And that kind of happened in my last relationship because I didn't listen to other people. I acknowledged them, but I didn't actually listen to them because of how I felt about the person I was in a relationship with. For me, I believe it had a lot to do with self-esteem. It had a lot to do with self-image and like how I saw myself. I dated someone who I don't think I would ever date someone like that. I think that, you know, I'm a nice guy. I have my head on straight. I have a lot going for me, but I've never been that popular guy with the good-looking girl. As long as I can remember. I haven't been dating, I don't know. I've been dating kind of a long time. 26 now. I started, though, when I was like 18. I didn't have a middle school girlfriend. You know, let's hold hands, let's do this. I was weird in middle school. I was like really weird. In high school, I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't like the high school I went to. I didn't like the girls I went to high school with. It wasn't until I graduated. I was a senior in high school, and then like the last couple months of high school, and then the next year, that I had my first girlfriend. That we actually dated, and it was kind of different for me. And I had this idea of what was going to happen, and you know, I fell into the whole Utah dating idea. It's toxic. For people who listen to this that don't live in Utah, you don't really understand it unless you live here. You have to look a certain way. You have to do the things a certain way if you want to fit in here. And it's a lot of groupthink. And it kills you if you're not in that group. Especially if you're 1 foot into that group and 1 foot out of that group. I experienced like a lot of dating issues because of it when I went to college. That was the biggest indicator for me. I went to Utah Valley University, and that was essentially just a big high school. The girls there, they lived at home still. There are some that lived in the dorms or whatever, but there weren't really dorms. It was just off-campus housing. Most of them lived at home, it seemed like. And it was right next to BYU. I don't think I have to speak on BYU girls that much because honestly, that wasn't for me. And they do things so differently down there. So my dating history is kind of fragmented and not very positive. The high school girlfriend, I ended up taking care of her and her mom. And that's not something that an 18-year-old should be doing, in my opinion. I think anytime you have these relationships where all these extra things get introduced, it's going to put a strain on it. And if you're not ready for the strain of just a relationship, you're damn well not ready for the strain that's going to come from adding in extra stuff. So the fact that her mom was the way that she was made it so difficult to date her. I've said many times, you know, you're not dating their parents, you're dating them. But honestly, it factors in. It's such a huge factor. If someone's parents have an issue with you or they demand so much from you, it really causes problems in the relationship. I think that overall, it was a good experience, and one that I'm glad that it didn't end up in marriage. At one point, I was like, I'm going to marry this girl. Man, if I had $1 for every time I thought that, I'd have like $4. No, well, honestly, when I have these feelings about people, then that's ultimately the goal. For me, anyway. I don't really see myself dating people long term if I don't see like an end game, like marriage, kids, that type of thing with them. Because otherwise I'm just wasting my time and I'm wasting their time. Casual dating is fun, but that's all it is. It's casual dating. I'm never going to be like, oh, we're boyfriend and girlfriend, and then just mess around for a couple years. Like, nobody has time for that. Nobody has time to be led on and led to believe that things are going to change. And I've seen that too often. It seems like people just kind of fall out of it with each other. And it's kind of sad that you know you're dating without a purpose. And if you're in a long-term relationship, then that's something that I think always looms in the back of your mind. Is where is this going to go? What am I going to do with this? Is this really what I want? Because sometimes I don't think we know when we're first dating. It's just something cool that's happening to us. But I think ultimately it needs to be something that's addressed. And in Utah County, that was the DTR that defined the relationship. Which is the biggest joke, because I don't think it's something that should be a checkpoint. It's not a video game. Your relationship doesn't save once you hit a certain checkpoint. I think a lot of ways that's damaging. If suddenly out of nowhere you're like, what are we? We need to define this right away. I need to know now. Nobody wants to become out like that. And I don't think that they realize the importance of it, as well as the importance of not rushing it. I didn't necessarily have a college girlfriend. I had a girl in college that I hung out with a lot. For a good 2 years we hung out and never really figured out what we were doing until the very end. It was about a month before we ended everything. We started dating. And that's kind of an indication and model that I would never follow. I don't like this whole idea of hanging out. Let's hang out. Let's be friends, but maybe we're more, but we don't really know. And we're too scared to figure it out. What a waste of time. I look back, I can count on one hand like the legitimate girlfriends that I had. I tend to get into these longer relationships. I don't see any of them as being like a terrible thing. I don't have any regrets. I try to keep the regrets to a minimum if possible. I think I learned something out of every single relationship, and it's ultimately built me into a better person because of it. I try my best not to badmouth any of my previous relationships to anybody else, because there was a lot of good that came out of them, and at one point, you know, you do legitimately love somebody and you're in a relationship with them, and I don't think once things end or you know, you're no longer together that you just can forget feelings and memories. I think that they become part of what you remember, but that's all there are. All they are is good memories or hard memories. This last relationship brought out a lot of unaddressed issues that I had, and it forced me to step back and really evaluate who am I as a man and what I expect. I don't believe I've seen a couple things from my ex, and I've been, you know, yelled at my ex about certain things that I don't feel are true. Because I really did try, and I've always tried in relationships, But ultimately, if both people aren't trying, then your relationship is doomed. Like, you literally cannot make up slack in a relationship. As much as you want to think, people are like, relationships are a two-way street. Relationships are 50-50. You know, relationships are not 50-50. Relationships are 100-100. Everybody needs to be putting in time and effort, the exact amount of time and effort. This doesn't have to be manifested in the exact same way. For a good portion of my last relationship, I was the one providing. And I didn't have a problem with that. I was fine when I was bringing money home and things around the house were being done by my partner. That was fine for me. I didn't think, oh, we both have to make money. We both have to put in all this stuff. And that's okay. But when you feel like things become more one-sided, you start to have that resentment a little more. And that's the first little crack in a relationship's foundation. Especially if it's something that you try to talk to someone about and you can't. I feel like the more I tried and the more she tried, things were really good. The problem with the relationship was timing. It didn't seem like we were trying at the same time. And so that it didn't work out. Apart from the other things, I don't think that there are things in your relationship that you should ever put up with. I don't think that you should ever put up with someone lying to you. Even if it's little things. Finding out someone lied to you just kind of crushes your soul a little bit. Like, oh, I didn't realize that we weren't being honest with each other. And for some reason, people think that, maybe not telling the truth is a better option than telling the truth and having the pain or whatever, the consequences of whatever you're lying about. I want to tell you right there, that's false. First off, if you're thinking that you're lying to your partner about something to protect their feelings, you honestly shouldn't be with them. That's just plain and simple. I don't think we should ever put up with cheating in our relationships. That is something really, I say that, and it's hard for me to say that because I put up with it in my last relationship. I was cheated on so many times, and I put up with it, and I didn't end things, and that goes back to the self-esteem, self-image thing, because I was like, man, how am I ever going to get a girl like this ever again? Unless I put up with what she's doing right now, and I keep this girl, and I love her, and I'm willing to overlook. That's foolish. I was dumb. I look back on that, I want to punch my old self in the face and be like, you know what, dude? Come on. You need to have a little bit more of a spine, a little bit more of a backbone, and realize that it's disrespectful. Cheating is so disrespectful. It doesn't have to be physical cheating. Emotionally cheating on someone is just as bad. I don't think that I realized what I was doing to myself when I allowed that to happen, and for me to be somewhat okay with it and to give off the idea that I was okay with it by staying with her while it happened. Cheating it's not an accident. It doesn't just happen. It's not something that, I'll never do it again. Cheating is definitely a conscious decision that we make, and it's a behavior. And if we get gratification out of a behavior, eventually we continue to do it. It becomes a habit. Why do we cheat anyway? Like, what's the point? If you're not happy with someone, if someone's not giving you what you need emotionally, physically, then honestly, evaluate why you're with them. Is it the formality? Not formality. What's the familiarity? Sorry. Is it familiarity? Like, oh, I've just been with them so long. I hate making small talk. I like to talk to them, and I know that they know me. Part of that is, I think, is in everybody's mind, because it's easier to be with someone that we've been with and to kind of put up with the bullshit, even if it's not good. It's still okay most of the time. And that's what I did, and that's how I justified it with my last relationship. I don't think we should ever have to put up with emotional abuse. Obviously, abuse is awful. I think that there's a lot of dudes out there that are like, oh, I'll never hit a girl. I'll never put my hands on a woman. And I'm very cautious with that because I don't think you should. But I'll be candid with you and I'll be honest. There are some times when things get out of control and you don't understand what's happening. I'm not gonna go into it. I'm not saying that I'm punching girls out. It's not Ray Rice in the elevator. But I've been in situations where abuse happened, and I'm not proud of it. It's actually really disgusting to me that I even have to say that. Emotional abuse, though, it takes its toll on you, and it's just as bad as physical abuse. Sometimes we just accept it like, oh, that's just how it is. That's how he is. That's how she is. I had to be with somebody, and I was with someone that continually would tear me down about different things and make me feel like I wasn't important, or I didn't matter, or I was never going to be with anybody better. And I heard it enough that I started to believe it, and ultimately I didn't ever go anywhere, and I allowed it to continue. At the same time, I feel like I did it a little bit going the other direction. And that's as hard for me to say. My relationship at times was crazy. It just was absolutely crazy. The things that I could not even make up. Things that you see in movies, and your heart kind of sinks a little bit because you're like, what's going to happen next? You know those Yankee candles? If you ever had one chucked at your head, things get kind of scary. It gets scary when you're put in a situation and you do something that you never thought you would ever do. I was I was a firm believer that I would never put hands on anybody that was female. That I would never physically abuse someone. But the fact of the matter is, when you're bigger than the girl that you're with, and she becomes belligerent and she starts swinging on you, sometimes you do your best to nullify the situation. You try and walk away. But sometimes things happen, and it's inexcusable. And that should have been a sign right there. You should not be in a relationship that's abusive at all. Ever. There's no getting around it. I don't think we should ever be in a relationship with people who treat us like an ATM or like their personal maid, personal servant. I think that goes back to both people working in a relationship and working at something. I'm a very giving person, so in my relationship, I tried my best to always provide whatever my partner needed. And So sometimes I felt like an ATM, but it was self-imposed. I wasn't going to get mad because I was the one initiating it, you know? And eventually it becomes difficult when you're the only one who's like, oh, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to give you money, and then it becomes expected, and then they expect you to cook, they expect you to clean. It's almost like that 50s lifestyle, except it would be one-sided. I think people criticize that a lot. They're like, oh, that woman's husband had her under his thumb. She cooks and cleans all day, waits for him to come home. He was the sole provider, and he was taking care of the family, and she took care of the home. I don't really see a problem with that. I've always had this kind of romantic fantasy of it. Like, oh, gee, what would it be like if I moved to the suburbs, had a house, white picket fence, a housewife, 2.5 kids, a dog, maybe. And I went to work, I wore a suit, had a briefcase, came home, hot meal was waiting, kids were ready, kids had done their homework. I think it's an interesting time to live in. I don't think it fits in today's world because there's so much more mobility as far as careers go, and women chasing careers. I think it's great. I don't think that they should ever limit themselves to, this is what I think I can do. And I think as the world goes, they kind of get put into these categories like, these are women jobs. We expect women to do these jobs. I've been thinking a lot about being a teacher. How many male teachers did you have in like elementary school, middle school, high school? Like, yeah, you had a good majority of them, but a lot of them were female. It's not a female profession. Just like nurses aren't a female profession. How many male nurses do you see? Not very many. You see a lot of male doctors, but nurses, a lot of females. It's almost like, oh, men shouldn't do that. If you want to do that, fine. I think that everybody needs to just find something they like and work on it. And that translates into your relationship. I think that it's interesting that we put these ideas into our relationship, like the man needs to provide, the woman just needs to be pretty, or she's going to do the housework. I personally love to cook. I would never expect someone to cook for me because that's a skill I have. I would never expect to be just leeching off of someone. I think that working together is the way to strengthen your relationship. When you can share equal responsibility, it goes a long way into helping everybody feel like they're contributing to the relationship, and that in turn helps everybody feel like they're equally important in the relationship. Obviously, communication in a relationship is important. It's the most important thing. I don't think we give as much thought to it as we should. But there's a lot of things that need to be discussed in relationships, and some are difficult conversations. But if you avoid them, it makes things harder. I've always wondered, just based on my relationships versus these other people that I've gone to school with or I've interacted with, and they get engaged and married pretty quickly. I mean, they start dating. From dating to marriage, it's really quick. I dated, my last girlfriend for 2 years. And it didn't work. So there were points at which I thought it was going to work. What had happened if I had proposed and we'd been married. Then you face divorce, then you have all those problems with divorce and everything. It's not just a breakup. And so I'm always kind of wary and trying to figure out when these people get engaged and married in like 6 months or something. I'm like, man, did you guys have all the conversations that you should have? I don't know if you did. I think that there's a lot that you should talk about. And I think that a lot of people are strong and their decision to get married is their own. I won't criticize it. But there are so many conversations that we don't have or that you don't know about your partner. And if you don't talk about them, it sets you up for a surprise later on. Sometimes those surprises aren't good. And you're taken aback and you don't know what to do with that information. I don't think that you necessarily need to sit down and go over everybody's life histories in the first 2 months of dating and figure out, every little detail about the person, because that's part of dating and falling in love with someone is you learn about them as you go along. I think it's funny. My ex listened to the first 2 episodes of the podcast, and she was like, I didn't even know some of this stuff about you. I was like, man, after 2.5 years, still didn't come up. And that's partly because I don't talk about myself in the relationship as much, and there's a lot about my past that I would prefer not to go into great detail. But I am an open book, and I love to talk about it. And basically, if someone will listen, I'll talk all day about it. And which is what this podcast basically is. I just find it interesting to know that people are willing to take that leap of faith and get married to somebody without, fully knowing what they're getting into. But that goes into the Utah dating, and yeah, it's kind of crazy and a shit show. I think that another part of what we should never have to deal with in a relationship is when people get over the top angry. And I am guilty of this. I have anger issues, and I've been working to deal with those. How to not let things get out of hand so that you just go fully Hulk when you get mad at something. And it's funny because I started living with my ex from the beginning. Okay? That's not a good idea. That wasn't a good idea. I'd never lived with anybody else. It'd just been me. I'd had roommates in college, but as far as living with someone, it was a whole different experience, and I don't think I was honestly ready for it. Thought I was. Thought it'd be pretty awesome to have a living girlfriend, And so there was a lot of times when you just step on each other's toes. You are not used to having to share a space with someone, and you get so mad about things. And it's honestly, every single person gets irritated and gets mad, but it's all about how it comes out. I can't deal with the passive aggressiveness. That just kills me. You'll have people that are like, I'm not mad. And then they secretly are just boiling inside. That's not healthy. I know that, speaking from personal experience. I'll play it off. I'll be like, no, not a big deal, bro. You good? Deep down, I'm like, oh man, I hope that he says something to me, or I hope that she says something to me, because I'm going to go off on him. I've had enough, and I just want to go off on him. But that's not what comes to the surface. No, I'm good. And you try and stay pretty even keel. It's not good to hold back this anger for, 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days. I'm sure there's couples that hold this anger back for 5 years. Why would you do that? That just eats you up. And then it comes out and it's directed at your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, and it's bad. Oh boy, it is bad, because suddenly a fight over something turns into a fight over a huge thing. Suddenly you are bringing up things that happened a week ago, 2 months ago, and you're like, I'm still mad that you didn't unload the dishwasher. And you're like, wait, what does that even have to do with this? It just compounds. It compounds and you become angry. I don't think you should have to put up with that in a relationship. I think as adults, it's something that can be talked about and you can simmer down. You can cool down. As an adult, you should have learned that by now. And it took me a long time to learn that. And to just calm down, step back from what I was doing, and relax a little bit. And talk when things were cooled down. Because a lot of times, you say some pretty messed up things when you're angry at somebody. And that doesn't help one bit. It actually, it makes it worse. You start saying things that you really don't mean. You're just trying to get your shots in. I don't think that we should ever have to put up with someone in our relationship who doesn't support our dreams. Even if they're ridiculous. Someone who doesn't support your dreams, that's hard to live with. I think that you can be realistic. And if someone has dreams to, I want to be a billionaire. Like, well, maybe, let's scale back. How are we going to do this? And you can talk to them about it. But you can always be supportive of people. Oh, I want to be a cosmetologist. Man, that's stupid. Why would you say that? If that's something that they want to do, fine. Let them do it. If you can be realistic about dreams and be supportive at the same time. I think there's a lot of negative people out there who they look at dreams as being something that has to be attainable at all times. But I don't think that they have to be necessarily, but you just have to be willing to work and put in the work for your dreams. And if someone isn't willing to accept that you want to do that, I don't think they have a place in your life. One thing that I've always liked about my ex was that her relationship with my family was very good. I don't think that we should have to deal with someone in our life who takes exception to your family and is rude to them all the time, or shuts down around your family and won't talk to them. Understandably, some families are intimidating and some are just kind of nuts. But that doesn't mean you have to be rude or isolate your partner from their family or from your family. And so I was always grateful that my ex would interact with my nieces and nephews. She didn't like kids that much. And our family gatherings, there's a ton of kids. I don't like kids that much. And it was hard because I was like, man, I want to go to Thanksgiving, but there's going to be like 20 kids running around like trying to jump on you and want to talk your ear off, and you're just trying to eat some turkey, chill, And so it was always nice that she was accepting of, the family situation, how it was, especially coming from a religious family and she wasn't religious, and it's difficult, and I can't imagine because I was in the situation. I went to her family's get together and it was uncomfortable, and I probably came off like a total jerk because I didn't really say much and I kind of kept to myself. I wasn't like on my phone or something. I just was kind of listening, and it was uncomfortable. And I remember saying afterwards that it was nuts, and I made a comment about how it was not something that like I could get on board with for like a wedding if her family was there. And I was like, that was kind of messed up that I even said that, but that caused a big fight, and understandably so. I don't really think that you should badmouth anybody's family, even regardless of the situation, even if it is like their family's absolutely nuts. Because like I said before, you're not dating their family. You're dating her or him. And you try your best to do what you can for them. And if the family doesn't like you, then that's too bad. And hopefully eventually that they will. So I became single the day after Christmas. What an awful time to get broken up with, right? Especially you do all the family stuff and you do all the pictures and the gifts, and then boom, you're single. But didn't actually become completely single until like February or March. It's when I kind of accepted it. I was trying to get back with my ex and doing what I could in that department. And so I started this whole dating thing. I haven't dated in 2 years. I haven't been out there. And I hate it. It's absolutely ridiculous. Tinder and apps like that, that's like what people do. And to me, what an incredibly shallow app. You're going to swipe right if you find them attractive because it's their picture. If you took pictures away and just had a baseball stat sheet, this is what they like, these are their favorite restaurants, and you swiped based on that, I bet your match list would look completely different, and you probably wouldn't be happy with it. As messed up as that is to say, those apps are based purely on physical attraction. Unless you're like me. I think Tinder's hilarious. Because I do this thing where I'll just sit there and I power swipe. And I will just start swiping right, not looking at anybody, just swiping right. Like everybody. Like. And then sometimes I sit there and I feel bad for myself because I'm like, I know there were some people in there that, not attracted to at all, that I didn't even make the cut because they didn't swipe me right, And it's fun though because I've matched with people that I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting. And you talk to them and you have some interesting Tinder dates. But it's so hit or miss. And honestly, it's more miss than hit. That's a low batting average when it comes to Tinder because it's hard to be compatible with someone, it seems like these days. There's not a lot of ambitious people. I'll just say it. There's not a lot of ambitious people on the app. A lot of times there's a lot of people that are just wasting time. And that becomes hard because I'll talk to some of these girls and they're not interested in doing anything. They're not really interested in things. I like Netflix. Netflix isn't a hobby, okay? Netflix is something you do to unwind at the end of the day. If Netflix is your hobby, there needs to be some reevaluation of your life, okay? I'm just going to call it how I see it. There are so many it's hard to date these days, I think, because of how jaded people are, how skeptical people are. I think skepticism is great, but we kind of have created this culture of people who don't trust, people who don't believe in other people, and people who initially aren't going to be themselves or be honest because they're trying to make a good first impression. As sad as that is, that if you were just yourself, it wouldn't impress anybody. Think about that. If you were just yourself, it wouldn't impress anybody. I think that when we step back and we're looking at the type of people we go after, everybody has a type. And everybody makes a decision about who they're interested in. And yet there's guys out there that don't understand this. And they get mad at these girls because they don't have a chance with them. They don't vibe with them. They're not compatible with them. And so they get mad, do messed up things, say messed up things, and it creates problems for the rest of the guys that are just trying to date. I've always done okay. I'm not going to call myself a ladies' man, because I'm not. Because I've always had to work really hard. But I've always done alright. And so it takes a little bit to impress me, you know? It honestly, you have to have qualities. And I don't think a lot of girls these days understand that. They assume that, my highlight is popping, my wing is perfect. Look at my hair. It's awesome. Yeah, I hit the gym, booty gains, whatever. They think that this is the only thing that matters. I'm not going to be that guy who's like, it matters what's on the inside. Because honestly, physical attraction is a good 60, 70, 80% of initially what brings people together. But it fades pretty quickly. If you are pretty shallow, you have nothing going on, you're not going to stay with anybody. That goes for girls and for guys. You can be a really pretty dude, but if you can't do much, or you're lazy, it's not going to work out for you. And that's just the fact of the matter. And it's a harsh reality for some people, because they think that the world is like high school and they'll always get by with the bare minimum, aka their looks. And that's not how the world operates, honestly. I think it's funny, Ronda Rousey had these shirts. It was like, don't be a DNB. I was like, what's a DNB? And it's a do nothing bitch. I think that's hilarious. I don't think that you should ever not have goals and not be interested in things and not be striving to be the best person that you can be. I honestly don't believe that you can care for someone and care for their needs if you can't isolate what your needs are. Figure out what you want. I've often wondered why I date the girls that I have dated. It seems to be the opposite of the type of people that I would think that I would date. Let me try and explain. I come from a stable 2-parent household, never wanted for anything, always was provided for, went to college, had a very stable life, and it seems like every girl that I've dated has had a fractured household. Dated people whose parents were separated, who didn't talk to one or both of their parents, struggled in some way, whether it was addiction, whether they had a kid, whether, it was just something different about them. It wasn't the girl who was, from a 2-parent household who went to college, someone similar to me, and I've never understood why I chose the girls that I chose. And it's not that I like charity work. I'm not trying to go out there and, what damaged girl can I bring home, to my parents and maybe shock my parents with. That was never it. It was always something a little bit deeper than that. And for the first time in my life, actually, right now has been great because I don't have to worry about dating. I can be happy with who I am and where I am. And if the opportunity comes around, then I can jump on it and I can be happy with where I'm at with that. I don't have to be constantly searching and hoping that I find a girl who likes me and I need this validation and all this nonsense. it's almost like, oh, you're single? What's wrong with you? Especially being 26 in Utah, people are, oh, are you retarded? Or, not retarded, that's a rude word. Is there something wrong with you? Why don't you have a wife? Why don't you have a long-term girlfriend that you're about to marry? And it's kind of a joke. Why here? I guess it's because of all the people who get married so young. Because everywhere else I've ever been, I'm like, man, I fit in. I don't have kids. I'm a college graduate, and I'm 26, and I'm just out there living life. And everywhere else, it's like, awesome, dude, you're right on track. Maybe have a little bit of a better job. So that's why I think it's difficult being here in Utah, because of the stigma with dating and what comes with it. And so ultimately, if a relationship comes, it comes. If it doesn't, no stress. And that means I'm the happiest that I've been in quite some time. I think that honestly, you truly need to know who you are and love who you are before you can be in a relationship that's successful. I don't think you can rely on someone else to validate your feelings about you and have a relationship be successful, because then ultimately you put a lot of power into their hands. Suddenly, if they don't think you're attractive or they cheat on you, it's a damaging blow to your whole entire psyche. You feel that, oh, I got all my validation from this one person who cheated on me, so I really am worth nothing. And that's not true. And I think that we need to step back a little bit and evaluate our relationships. Why are we with these people? I don't think that we should be with people who do any of those things I talked about in this podcast. Ultimately, you're trying to build a dream together. You're trying to figure out life together, and that if that's your ultimate goal, then that's great. If you just want to date and you want to smash, that's great too, but that needs to be made known. It's not cool to play with people's emotions, because when yours gets played with, it hurts and it sucks. And there's a lot of these dudes that can pretend like it doesn't hurt when a girl quits hitting them up, or when a girl gets a boyfriend and drops them. But if they were feeling them, they had feelings, it sucks. Just plain and simple. Transparency is everything. Transparency is everything in life, not just relationships. Being completely honest with yourself, being completely honest with your family, your coworkers, your friends, your significant other, that is what's going to make you successful. There's so much given to the idea that, you need to be right. Sometimes it's not better to be right in a relationship. Sometimes it's better to be sorry. Sometimes it's better to just leave things be. There's been many times where I've won arguments in relationships. I've been right, and I still feel bad. Or they still feel bad. Ultimately, we have to decide what we want in our relationships. We need to figure it out for both of them. Both sides of the relationship need to understand. I love being in relationships. Honestly, I love having a girlfriend. I love taking care of someone. I love spending, most of all, I love spending money. It's interesting. I won't go deep into it, but there's a love language thing where they talk about how do you express your love, whether it's giving time, giving service, physical ways, financially. I definitely I'm not so great with the whole emotions thing. I'm still developing into a fully functioning human. A lot of the ways I show love were through my actions, like what I was giving them. And honestly, you can't buy someone's love, but that was my way of showing it. Was spending the money, or going on trips, or going places with them. And it's hard when you don't understand the other person's love language, because they're like, you sit there and you're like, I do all these things for you. I do all these things for you, and what do you do for me? And then you step back and you're like, oh, well, your love language is different. Your love language is how you listen and how you take care of me. And without, you know, I don't know, what am I trying to say? I guess it's difficult. You have to know your partner, and that's first and foremost. You gotta know them, and you gotta know yourself, and you gotta be able to know how you show your love. And so if it's confusing and they don't think that you love them, that you can help them understand that these are the things that I do to show you that I care. Going back to it, I love being in a relationship, but right now, I'm not dying because I'm not in a relationship. If you'd asked me 4 months ago how I felt about not being in a relationship, it might have been, punctuated with sobs and, tears. Because of how I felt about it. Pathetic. Absolutely ridiculous. But at the end of the day, that's how I felt about it. And it's finally to a spot where I can be happy. Because I know that there's people out there who care about me. People who want to get to know me. People who find me interesting and attractive, and, whatever it may be. I didn't have to put all my my eggs into the X basket, I didn't have to feel like she dropped the basket and broke all the eggs. There are so many people in this world. Honestly, that's my advice too to people who struggle with breakups is there was a quote that I really liked. It says, "The good news is nothing lasts forever. The bad news is nothing lasts forever." So we feel like the end of the world sometimes when we break up with someone. But you have to realize that there's going to be someone who comes along who knows you just how you want them to know you. There's going to be someone who cares about you the same way. There's going to be someone who wants to give you their all, who's not going to be selfish, or who's not going to be so consumed with being right or having everything given to them. It's going to be great. And honestly, it's just patience. It comes down to patience. And what can you do to better yourself in preparation for that girl or that guy who comes along? It's going to be difficult to embrace that. I know it was for me. But ultimately, you'll figure it out. And it makes you happier in the long run. And so, kind of on that note, thank you again for listening. I do have a different way that I'm uploading. I'm still uploading to SoundCloud, but they do have a time limit restriction on free accounts. So I'm not going to have every podcast on SoundCloud because I don't want to pay for the premium SoundCloud. I already pay for too many things each month. I don't want to add a SoundCloud account. So I will continue to post new podcasts to my SoundCloud account. I think that I can fit about 5. Once I hit my 5th one, I've started uploading them to YouTube. So you can go and subscribe to the page. It's Reese's Pieces Podcast. Right now, episodes 1 and 2 are up there. I'll go ahead and upload this 3rd episode to YouTube as well as to SoundCloud. And so I'm more options that you can listen. Hopefully it makes it easier. And like I said, thanks so much for listening. I appreciate the support and can't wait to get back into the next podcast. Have a great night.